right. Good afternoon again, Minister. Thank you so much for being able to do this interview at last minute. Of course, with all of the conversation and with the news sending shockwaves throughout the country, it is now sparking conversation on what is next after a member of parliament dies. And so, can you walk us through exactly what is next and also the laws and the legal steps that are taken after a member of parliament passes away?
Well, a member of parliament is no different from any other citizen of the Bahamas. So the laws that apply to the death of any citizen of the Bahamas applies to a member of parliament. And the first thing, therefore, I would say in connection with this is that remember that this is a family matter. This is not just a public figure or an official matter. It's a family matter. And there are a lot of sensitivities which I think ought to be observed when a family is trying to grieve and absorb the news of a sudden death. And adding to this, of course, is the fact that was and is a public figure. So I'd like to lay that groundwork. And as I said to some of your colleagues, it just seems to me a bit unseemly to be talking at this stage and point about by-elections and when that's going to happen and all the rest of it. I think that the family ought to be allowed to make those kinds of decisions. So the question of what happens next is in the hands of his family, and we ought to allow the family to make whatever decisions they wish. And the government, as we do with all public funerals or state funerals, if the family requests it and wants it, will then fall in lockstep behind their wishes. So it's first and foremost a family matter, and let us allow them to deal with it as such. Now, in terms of what the law calls for, in situations where there are sudden deaths, either if you're being treated by a physician, then the death certificate has to be signed. Can in some cases be signed by a physician, and under our laws, the coroner reviews all deaths. And if there's a sudden death, there may in fact be the need for an autopsy. And in speaking to the Commissioner of Police this morning, he was saying that that's the likely reason why the remains were transported to New Providence to accomplish that fact. Because whenever there's a sudden death, you need to find out what the reason is.
Now, I know there was some conversations as well in terms of why is the body being transported to New Providence? Is it just solely based on an autopsy being performed on a cabinet minister, or is this the process of when a member of parliament, cabinet minister, passes away?
I don't think there's any, my understanding again on this is I don't think there's any special thing to do with a cabinet minister or a member of parliament. As I said, procedures are the same for all citizens of the Bahamas. And my understanding, having spoken to the Commissioner of Police this morning, is that the autopsy had to be done, and it's being done in Nassau.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about, you said no arrangements of any sort has been made in terms of a state funeral because it is in the hands of the family, correct?
Well, under our rules and conventions, a minister who dies in office is entitled to a full state funeral. There's no question about that. But state funerals are not imposed upon families. Many ministers and members of parliament in the past have refused them. So the family has to make its arrangements and its decisions. We normally, as a party, we also offer Gambia House. There's a special service which is done there. No doubt there should be a special service in PLP House in Freeport or some appropriate place in Grand Bahama. But all of those things I said are family matters, and they should be dealt with by the family. And I don't, I feel a bit queasy even discussing much of this in public, but I understand the public appetite for this. But I say to people, first and foremost, this is a family matter. Allow the family to organize its affairs. There's nothing nefarious or out of order about the body going to Nassau. These are all routine procedures and we should just allow the processes to take place. And I say this against the backdrop of the propensity, of course, in our society now, with the availability of social media for speculation to be all over the place. And there's no need for it. There needs to be the regular processes. This is a family matter, and allow the family to grieve and organize affairs around the event.
Now, Minister Mitchell, I know that the law side of all of this it's timely, and of course, Part 5 in the elections in the law book, it says that a writs of election should now be in place. I want to talk about that, and I want to take this time to educate the public on exactly the law part of it, and how the Speaker of the House would be the one to then, once notified, let the Governor General know, and then proceed into the 21 to 30-day by-election process. Can you talk about that for me?
Well, there are two actors in this, the Speaker of the House, the Governor General. Those are the actors. And then once those notifications are done, then the question is, what is the date? And the law sets a period, a minimum period and a maximum period for setting the date once those notifications have been done. But the key trigger, of course, is once the matter is brought to the Speaker's attention, the Speaker then does her notifications. That goes to the Governor General. The Governor General then makes a decision on the issue of the writ. Formal notifications are different from I heard it in the street, though. I tell people that quite clearly, so there has to be a formal notification of all these procedures.
And once the Governor General would have issued this formal writ of elections, then the sender would go to the constituency, and this is where the nomination process begins. Can you speak to that for me?
Well, I mean, a by-election has the same procedures as a general election, except that it's just for that particular constituency. So the nomination procedures are the same. Parties have to nominate the individuals who are running on their behalf. Of course, if you're an independent, you can also nominate as well. So nothing changes with all of that. So again, but nothing happens until these formal procedures are put in place. And they told me that when Jack Kennedy got assassinated in the United States, people were really queasy about having normal public functions continue because it was such a shock on the system. And I've seen some of the discussions in the public domain about this now, about, should we actually be, the man has just been passed away 24 hours. But of course, this is the modern era, and there's nothing you can do to stop people from these kinds of speculations. My point again is that this is a family matter. Allow people to grieve, allow people to get organized. The official processes, such as they are, will be underway, and it will be dealt with in due course.
Okay, any final words, Minister?
Well, I would like to, once again, on behalf of the Progressive Liberal Party, our leader, deputy leader, the cabinet, and members and supporters of the party, all our officers, Secretary General, to extend condolences to Obie's family on this terrible and shocking loss. It's unreal to so many people, but we recognize that this is the way life goes and life continues. But we are really grateful to him for the sacrifices he made, for the impact he made on the society. I think Grand Bahama and the West End community should be very proud of his success. I knew his father, Jackson. I knew his mother, Mary, and I knew them all well. And I'm sure his father never got to see the success that he had, but his father was an activist in Grand Bahama, and was one of the early supporters of the progressive cause in Grand Bahama. And I'm sure that they're back together again, and they must be extremely proud. He must be extremely proud of the success of his son in Grand Bahama. So may he rest in peace.
Thank you so much, Minister. And of course, my condolences to you on the passing of your colleague.
Thank you.
Have a great day.